20 years ago, a coalition of international peacekeepers led by Australian troops arrived in East Timor. They were there because militias had been terrorising locals after East Timor voted for independence. In the midst of this complex international effort, one little boy, Nelson Soares, nearly died in an incredible stroke of bad luck. What happened next was an extraordinary effort to save Nelson's life, led by the Australian commander of the International Forces, Sir Peter Cosgrove, and a dedicated Australian Army surgeon. Indonesia correspondent Anne Barker has the story.
"23-year-old Nelson Soares loves nothing more than joining his mates for a game of basketball at Manatuto, 2 hours from the capital Dili. But a prosthetic leg means he can only watch from the sidelines. He finds even walking difficult.
My father forbids me from playing sports. I just study and play with my younger siblings at home.
Nelson lost his right leg in a freak accident during East Timor's tumultuous birth. It was 1999, the year of the worst violence in the country's troubled history. Pro-Indonesian militias were on a murderous rampage, angry that Timorese had voted for independence.
People were either fleeing from their homes ahead of the mob there to burn it and to ransack and loot.
A coalition of international forces led by Australian Major General Peter Cosgrove arrived in Dili to secure East Timor from the ongoing violence.
Both in Dili, but wider afield in East Timor. No particular place was absent this looming threat of militia action against their own communities.
Food parcels were being airdropped into remote villages. Nelson was only 3 when he was hit by one.
The lad's been rushing around on what we call a drop zone, an open area where food aid was being dropped to the people of that district. Somehow he gets underneath a very heavy pallet of food on a parachute, but it badly mangles one of his legs.
Nelson was rushed to a military field hospital set up beside the airport runway in Dili.
A helicopter arrived with a number of casualties, and amongst those, 2 troops were carrying an improvised stretcher made of scarves, and on that was the very young Nelson Soares with the misfortune of a badly shattered leg.
The boy was already malnourished and underweight for his age. Dr. John Crozier, an Australian Army surgeon, faced the heartbreaking choice to amputate Nelson's leg.
To take off or contemplate taking the leg of a 3-year-old is a horrific thing.
Conditions in the field hospital were far from ideal.
We were operating in a tented facility hard up against the runway, an apron where the aircraft would still have their engines on as they discharged cargo and reloaded. But in that environment, the backblast from the engines, the noise, the dust, that was the environment, high humidity, that we were doing our work.
But there was no choice if he wanted to keep the boy alive.
If we don't do surgeries like this, lives are lost. If we make extraordinary lengths to try and preserve parts, body parts, often people will gradually die over days or weeks.
Nelson's only memory of the tragedy is waking up the morning after the surgery.
I thought I was still at home, but when I woke up and opened my eyes, I was still in the operating tent. I was shocked.
The little boy proved remarkably resilient, but the ongoing violence had left East Timor with no functioning hospitals and nothing to help a child amputee. It was quickly clear 3-year-old Nelson would need to be evacuated.
My decision was, with his family's agreement, he should move to the nearest, best place for care of the injury and therapy thereafter. So I said, let's get him to Australia, get him to whatever is the best place.
Nelson was flown to Sydney to be fitted for a prosthetic leg, the first of many such visits. He and his father would often stay at the home of Dr. Crozier.
Nelson is very much part of our family.
The Timorese boy was a similar age to Dr. Crozier's daughter, Emily. With his new leg, the pair became good mates, often playing together, even if they didn't speak the same language.
The one occasion when Nelson had been running and his leg came flying off while they were playing soccer didn't distress Nelson, not in the least. He was giggling. Emily, with horror, was seeing it, but it was only as she saw how Nelson laughed that she got over and accepted that this is not a big thing.
In the years since, Dr. Crozier has kept in contact with Nelson and his father. He treasures their bond.
To still have contact 20 years after an amputation is an extraordinary privilege. And it's a wonderful thing to see what was a scrawny 3-year-old, malnourished, horrifically injured, now a vital, well-muscled man, as freely mobile as other adults around him, on 2 legs now.
Life hasn't been easy, though, for Nelson. At 23, he's returned to school after years of medical care disrupted his education.
If I force myself to walk to school and return from school, I have to miss 2 to 3 days because my legs hurt. I can't afford to walk too far.
Today, East Timor is very different from the place where Nelson lost his leg. The violence has gone. It's a peaceful country, but with a difficult road ahead. And the man who was instrumental in saving Nelson's life has returned to Dili for the anniversary of the peacekeeping mission he led in 1999. There to greet him was Nelson Soares.
I remember you when you were very small. And to see you now makes my heart sing. Today I see you as a grown man and with ambition and a bright future.